This is an ODB Films production. Visit odbfilms.com today.
In Latin, Renovo means to renew, restore, or revive. This is the show about growing in our understanding and practice of faith. Past episodes are available wherever you like to listen to podcasts. I'm Doug Tuke, the Director of Ministry at ODB Films, and today, guys, listen, I've been wanting to make this show for a really long time. We're going to talk about C.S. Lewis and Catholics, but really about C.S. Lewis. I mean, just who he is. And I got to tell you, my reading of Mere Christianity as an undergrad flipped me upside down and set me on a course that I've been on my entire life. So I am jacked about C.S. Lewis. Now, for some of you, you're like fans. You read, Narnia. You're dialed in. But for a lot of you, he might actually be a character that you don't realize how just integral he is to modern Christian thinking. Not to mention, he's just a cool dude. I got asked at a dinner party not too long ago, I wonder why C.S. Lewis didn't become Catholic. And I thought that was kind of a fun topic for a show, even though just talking about C.S. Lewis has its own value. So we might run a little late today, and I apologize, but I really want to dig into the man and who he is and why he is who he is. And I hope spark an interest in you to dig into the just catalog of literature. So something to say here at the beginning that you really need to wrap your mind around. And it's this: the Church of England was really a different institution in C.S. Lewis's lifetime than it is today. That's you just grab a hold of that as the show progresses. Catholics, we love C.S. Lewis, but what we want to talk about today is, did C.S. Lewis love Catholics? And the reason is just because it's fun to find harmony in his thinking. We know that Lewis never converted to the faith, and there's really little indication that he ever considered it seriously. He was very devoted to his Christian faith and was clearly super intelligent, well-educated. You have to ask yourself, wouldn't he have seen the breadth, the beauty, kind of the truth of the Catholic faith, and maybe wish to follow in the footsteps of his buddies, G.K. Chesterton, his good friend J.R. Tolkien, in that fellowship of faith? Joseph Pearce really tackles that question, and he wrote a book, C.S. Lewis and the Catholic Church. Great book, check it out. Pearce explores basically Lewis's family background and agrees with a lot of other commentators that Lewis kind of had a blind spot when it came to Catholicism. And to understand what that is, what the blind spot is, we have to dig in to the politics of Northern Ireland just a little bit. So in the 16th century, the English really tried to assert more control over Ireland, okay? But the Irish, they rejected the revolution of Henry VIII, and then they were constantly in rebellion. And then later in the early 17th century, the English confiscated all the land of the northern part of Ireland and brought in Scotch Christianity, which is Scottish Presbyterians and English Protestants, to really colonize the country in an attempt to kind of subdue the Irish and to transform Ireland to a Protestant nation. Their plan basically failed. I mean, it caused a lot of violence, but it failed. The Irish never really gave in, and 400 years of bitter conflict really kind of ensued. So the Northern Irish Protestants really despised and feared the Southern Irish Catholics, and vice versa. It went both ways. Lewis was born into a Protestant family in the midst of really this historical setting, 1897, in Ulster, Northern Ireland. There was a deep and abiding distrust of all things Catholic. I mean, it was just really bred into him from generations of his Protestant ancestry. So it's important for us to know as listeners. Now, for Lewis, to become Catholic was as much of a paradigm shift as it would be for a Palestinian to convert to Judaism. It literally is that level of change. And in addition, Lewis, his Ulsterman credentials, I mean, this is a point of pride. We have to understand the atmosphere of the Church of England in his lifetime. Today, Anglicanism stands as kind of a classic example of a modernist, kind of vacillating Protestant institution. Some of its leadership is really kind of all over the board. It's a little fuzzy on some doctrinal issues, liberal on certain moral issues. Take that however you want. Sometimes we view Anglicanism as a little bit of an outdated national church. It's trying to be relevant. It's adopting women's ordination, same-sex marriage, and every form of political correctness. That is not the Church of England during C.S. Lewis's time. It just simply isn't. Okay, the Church of England emerged from the Second World War with a really strong reputation. In the 50s, there was a total resurgence of spiritual interest, this kind of Anglo-Catholic wing of the church, was strengthened by a lot of vocations to the priesthood, a really strong lay movement and a literary revival, basically, which included not only C.S. Lewis, but his friends, Dorothy Sayers, T.S. Eliot, the preacher, the spiritual writer Austin Ferrer, and a good number of outstanding theologians, scholars, artists, musicians, this whole thing. It was a vibrant church. So at the same time, the evangelical wing of the church was also surging with the success of Billy Graham crusades and an active and a popular movement of church growth in all kinds of suburbs. So there were really murmurings of the modernist theology that would eventually kind of hurt and divide elements of the Anglican church. But in Lewis's day, the Church of England was very traditional, very orthodox, truly the church of the English people. You need to wrap your mind around that, okay? Catholicism, on the other hand, was still viewed by the English as a foreign church, as kind of a dangerous foreign church, really. Catholic worship was in Latin, the rituals were ornate, and devotions to the saints were a little bit alien and kind of suspect. There wasn't that sort of approachable faith formation aspect of the saints that we might look to today. So to go to a Catholic Mass would involve making your way to a hut on the edge of town to worship with Italian immigrants and Irish ditch diggers. Okay, that was really the church in England at the time. So furthermore, to become a Catholic was to really thumb your nose at the entire English social system at the time. Converts were kind of blacklisted from professions. They were excluded from that sort of top table, cut off by friends and family, somewhat ostracized by all, especially in academia. That so many top-notch Englishmen like John Henry Newman, G.K. Chesterton, the Wilberforce brothers, Ronald Knox, and others, they took the step to convert. That was remarkable at the time. That was a real defiance of social status, academia, Oxbridge, Oxford and Cambridge thought. It was really like, no, this is where I'm going to do this. So understand that. Nevertheless, C.S. Lewis was not in anybody's pocket. He wasn't anybody's puppet, for sure. He was his own man, and he had tremendous strength of character to overcome a lot of the social problems of becoming a Catholic, and really had the strength of mind and the character to overcome, really like his upbringing, the challenge of being an Ulsterman. So why didn't he convert? And we should really press further. Pierce does this in his book to understand Lewis's understanding of the church. This is a big deal. So Lewis did not believe that one could be spiritual but not religious. That's an awesome convicted thought. In his classic work, Mere Christianity, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, he states that one needed to join community. Specifically, you needed to join a church. Here's a quote. It's a little bit long, but it's totally worth it. Lewis says, "I hope no reader will suppose that mere Christianity is here put forward as an alternative to the creeds of the existing communions, as if a man could adopt it in preference to Congregationalism or Greek Orthodoxy or anything else. It is more like a hall out of which doors open into several rooms. If I can bring anyone into the hall, I will have done what I have attempted to do. But it is in the rooms, not in the hall, that there are fires and chairs and meals. The hall is a place to wait in, a place from which to try the various doors, not a place to live in." That's a great line. Now, and he goes on. He really kind of says you're not to choose simply on matters of taste. It's not just, well, I'll try this, I'll try that. He goes on to explain specifically. He says this: when you do get into your room, you will find the long wait has done you some kind of good, which you would not have had otherwise, but you must regard it as waiting, not camping. You must keep on praying for light. And of course, even in the hall, you must begin trying to obey the rules which are common to the whole house. And above all, you must be asking which door is the true one, not which pleases you best by its paint and paneling. In plain language, Lewis says, the question should never be, do I like that kind of service? But, quote, are these doctrines true? Is holiness here? Does my conscience move me toward this? Is my reluctance to knock at this door due to my pride or my mere taste or my personal dislike of this particular doorkeeper? Wow, that's a great line. Okay, and we can only conclude, right, that Lewis really believed the Church of England was the truest church, that is where he found a deep-seated truth. And to understand that viewpoint, we got to kind of examine the way the Anglicans viewed the Reformation. This is a pretty big deal for C.S. Lewis. Okay, the classic Anglican understanding is that the Christian church existed in the British Isles from the earliest times, and that it was semi-independent of Rome anyway. Okay, so over the centuries, the Roman church exerted tons of power, and with that power came a little bit of corruption and doctrine and practice. And at the Reformation, according to this kind of view of history, the corruptions were really removed, and the true British Catholic Church was restored. Now, Lewis would no doubt have subscribed to this view and really seen himself, as a lot of Anglicans still do, as an English Catholic rather than a Roman Catholic. Does that kind of make sense? So it's geographical and would still claim apostolic tradition and full communion. Okay, that's important to understand. There's a rift there. Now, in addition to this, was kind of the typical Protestant understanding that what is most important is your personal walk with Jesus Christ. And I subscribe to that. As a Roman Catholic, I understand the personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Now, while Lewis stressed that you got to join a church to consider most true, like most Protestants, his personal life in Christ was by far the more important priority. And he talks about that extensively. Now, there's a balance there for Catholics, and that's really, really important for us to wrap our minds around. But really kind of bolstered by what would be sort of these Ulster prejudices, his Protestant worldview, and really kind of an inability to see or consider Roman Catholicism's claims to universal authority, Lewis was pretty much content to stay with the Church of England, a church where he could follow Jesus Christ as a mere Christian. And it's worth noting, despite being such a renowned author, C.S. Lewis's death was actually not very publicized, even because the day he died, on November 22nd, 1963, was also the day President Kennedy was assassinated. But his faith, however, gave us a ton of incredible books. And I want to give you a real opening of my favorites, just must reads as a disciple for you to grow when we return from this break.
ODB Films is a non-profit Catholic ministry dedicated to artfully made, spiritually rich films. We invite you to visit odbfilms.com and preview over 200 of our short films designed to complement your ministry needs. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter for previews of upcoming content and access to sneak peeks of future projects. Visit odbfilms.com today.
Okay, we're going to talk about the books that Lewis really gave us and dig into some of his thought, which is fun. He is so inspiring and for many has really articulated some of the mysteries of the Christian faith in a super approachable way. So the first ones, published 1938 to 1946, were the Space Trilogy, and you might not be familiar with these. This is Lewis's very first fictional series, and you can see there's quite a bit of a gap between the publishing dates of all three books. They're really spread out over time. First one's called Out of the Silent Planet, second one is The Paralandra, and the third one is That Hideous Strength. Dig in. Great fiction. I mean, just incredible fiction, okay? The Pilgrim's Regress, 1933. This is a great one. It's Lewis's first work of prose that he ever published. And the story is about a guy named John who starts out in search of an island that he really wants. And then he just has like this glimpse of this island, which has been really hard for him to forget. He can't forget it. And then the story about it is about his desire that makes him sort of undertake this journey and about the journey itself. Super, super good book. That should be a film. It's a great film idea. Screwtape Letters, year of publishing, 1942. A lot of you have heard of this one. These are a series of letters written by a demon called Screwtape to his demon nephew, Wormwood, who's a novice put in charge of a person who's referred to as the patient. And Wormwood is supposed to tempt this human and make him mess up, thus bringing him closer to hell, Satan, and away from heaven, God. And it describes the human nature pretty darn good. So the patient has been shown to convert to Christianity. And then the book also describes tons of areas of temptation like gluttony, sex, pride. And this is where Wormwood is kind of supposed to sway him. The book ends with the patient going to heaven and Wormwood being destroyed by other demons. It's a must read. There's also a play that goes with it, and it's phenomenal. In 1945, he wrote The Great Divorce. This is a powerhouse. The person who is telling the story they've kind of mysteriously found themselves in a very ominous, kind of gloomy place known as the Gray Town. And wanting to leave, the person boards a crowded bus to another town. And this new town is beautiful, but none of the new arrivals are able to really enjoy it because everything is too heavy for them to lift, even like a leaf on the ground. So they're soon welcomed by spirits who tell them that this is the path to heaven and that they need to forsake some things to get there. And it really just kind of shows the human mind how it works and how we are not willing to let go of something for something better. It's a really unique concept. It's totally worth reading. Good stuff. Tons of imagery, tons of discussion. Okay, 1950 to 1956, The Chronicles of Narnia, right? Oh my gosh, unbelievable fantasy, unbelievable thinking, brilliant, brilliant books. Dig in. I don't want to go into too much detail here because these are the most popular ones for all ages, adults, children. Oh my gosh. 3 films were made about the first 3 books. Good stuff, but just brilliant, far better books. So much more detail. Check out The Chronicles of Narnia. Okay, The Dark Tower. This is one that doesn't get talked about much because it wasn't actually published until much later, 1977. So it's an unfinished story that's believed to be the original sequel to Out of the Silent Planet from the space trilogy. So once this academic developed a device, the chronoscope, to see into the parallel universe called Other Time, all this story kind of ensues. The villain of the story is a semi-human with a horn on his head, known as the Unicorn, who is the ruler of Other Time. And he wants to build a prestigious university there, stinging and turning people into slaves to do his bidding. The story kind of revolves around time travel, the adventures of entering into another universe, and one very mean unicorn. It's worth reading. It's compelling. It's not his best work, but it's good fantasy if you're into it. Okay, now the nonfictions. Way back in the 1940, Lewis wrote The Problem of Pain, and this was a just a complete. At this point, C.S. Lewis had converted. He was a complete Christian at heart, and this book really kind of deals with the aspect of suffering explained from a Christian point of view. Questions like why God allows evil to manifest the earth they're dealt with in this book in an amazing academic way that's very approachable. It beautifully tries to combine these kind of concepts of suffering with the Christian belief that God is kind and fair. It's a wonderfully written piece of literature. Brilliant for those kind of seeking some apologetic language too. It's so good. Problem of Pain. Came out in 1940. A lesser known one, it's good. It's worth reading. A Preface to Paradise Lost. Came out in 42. It's an immensely popular book. It takes kind of on John Milton's famous Paradise Lost, but this is he just kind of writes kind of an introduction to it. It's worth checking out. One that rocked my world in college, The Abolition of Man, published in 1943. It deals with the subject of education, I should say, and it really lists the importance of not doing away with or forgetting its natural value, along with the unpleasant consequences if that occurs. It also deals with it really helped me understand Aquinas. It unpacks natural law, kind of in Lewis's version. Good stuff. 1947, he wrote Miracles. This was written, and then it was revised actually later in 1960. Lewis addresses the possibility of miracles actually taking place, God forbid. He blames modern thinkers for making people believe that miracles are not real and can't happen. It's definitely worth a read. Okay, Powerhouse, 1952, Mere Christianity. Still regarded as one of the greatest books of introduction to the deeper truths of the Christian faith. It is, amazing book, okay? It was inspired by radio talk shows conducted by the BBC between 1942 and 1944. It's been divided into 3 sections. The first one, The Case for Christianity. Then the second one, Christian Behavior. And then the third one, Beyond Personality. And it's based on deep-seated theology, a real analytical study about God and religion, but it's designed as an invitation to draw you in. N.T. Wright, one of my favorites as well, alive and well today, Anglican bishop, he wrote Simply Christian, which is really kind of his version in many ways of Lewis's Mere Christianity. Required reading for believers. I really believe that. Okay, Surprised by Joy, The Shape of My Early Life, published in 1955. It's really an autobiography, although it doesn't recount his entire life. The main theme of this book is Lewis's discovery of joy and how he gives his own meaning in his life. And he also describes his journey from being an atheist to becoming a believer and converting to Christianity. Gorgeous, simple read, super good. Reflection on the Psalms came out in 1958. It's a discussion about the Psalms in the Bible. It's easy for you to read if you kind of know your Bible very well. Otherwise, you're going to be kind of like flipping back and forth, referring to the different Psalms a lot, but it's definitely worth your time. In 1960, The Four Loaves came out. This book explores the concept of love and really its true nature from a Christian point of view. It's kind of a theology of the body, if you will. Lewis says that there are 3 types of love: need love, gift love, and appreciative love. He also focuses on these 4 aspects of love, which are friendship, affection, unconditional love, and romance. And the book was based on a 1958 radio talk show that was pretty much open about the issues of sex, and it was a bit ahead of its time. It's worth a read. It's really rooted in deep-seated relationship. A Grief Observed came out in 1961. This is a powerhouse. It's about grief and the trials that C.S. Lewis deals with after the death of his wife, Joy Davidman. When the book was first published, Lewis used a pen name, N.W. Clerk. And in the book, he refers to his wife as H. Her first name was actually Helen. And it's based on a set of notebooks that Lewis had kept wherein he used to write about his deep sadness upon, losing her. It was republished under his name only in 1963 after his death. And the last one I would talk about is God in the Dock. It's a collection of essays on theology and ethics. It's like the title suggests. It's a collection on theology and specifically on ethics, and it covers topics from science and religion, Christianity, and then the challenges that it faced during the transition of the world to really the modern era. Guys, listen, C.S. Lewis is a treasure. He is an absolute thinking treasure, and I love how much Catholics love him. And I hope that this show kind of helps you kind of understand, well, this is where he was coming from. This was his spiritual perspective. Sometimes Catholics get a little snobby about great thinkers and he never converted, so, it's not worth reading, or there's not enough truth there. And, if it's not Catholic, it's crap. What a load of bunk. Look to the brilliance of Lewis's academia and just the giftedness, the richness that he brings. And also remember that he and Tolkien used to get together and smoke pipes and chat it out. I mean, I love that we get to reap the benefits of their fruits. So I hope you'll dig in to his incredible catalog of books. And I hope this show helped you have a better understanding of who C.S. Lewis is and what gifts he brings to all of us believers. Thanks for listening. Sincerely, we are partners in the journey of faith. I really hope you'll share the Renovo podcast with your friends and foes. Send your topic suggestions, questions, and/or comments to doug@odbfilms.com. Friends, always remember to engage the tradition and live the conversion. Until next time, God bless.